joined us again for another episode of the GDM show. Today we're back with Brother Sabur. How are you, Brother Sabur? Assalamu alaikum.
Right.
You good? And today we're discussing evidence, right? So I have no clue as to what you're going to talk about, so I'll just let you take it away and explain the topic to us.
Okay, sure. This is about beliefs. What are beliefs based on? This is a very important question. Many people, when it comes to beliefs, they think beliefs should be based on just the scientific method. Some people believe that beliefs should be based on some sort of philosophical formula. Some people believe in logical truths, that everything must be proven. And so we want to talk about evidence, because when it comes to most of the beliefs that we as human beings hold, right, we don't actually think much about how we came to these beliefs. So there's some beliefs that we may hold that are rational, there's some beliefs that we may hold that are irrational. Now when it comes to God's existence, many atheists, scientists and philosophers, they may say, what is the scientific evidence for God? What is the philosophical evidence for God? Give me proof, give me evidence, right?
Yep.
So what I want to do today is I want to speak about the fact that the majority of our beliefs as human beings is not based upon scientific evidence, are not based on deductive philosophical arguments. Most of the rational thoughts, beliefs that we as human beings hold, they are based upon our rational thinking, just basic rational thinking, right? And to set up the standard to be so high that normal basic beliefs can't meet up to that standard. So what it essentially is about is, when it comes to the atheist worldview, they have one standard by which they judge everything by, right? And that's just all their beliefs in their life and all the rational beliefs that they hold. And there's another special standard that they hold, which is when it comes to God's existence. And this is an extremely skeptical standard. So when it comes to God's existence, it's almost like they turn up skepticism to 1,000%, right?
Okay.
And that's the special standard, right? So what I want to do is I want to show that this special standard is incorrect, right? And show that if you use basic reasoning, you will come to conclude that there is a creator.
Sure.
But if you use these special standards that atheists come up with, not only would you then not come to the conclusion there's not a creator, you can also not come to a conclusion of 99% of the beliefs that we as human beings hold.
That's very interesting, because there's this thing that I always say is that if you apply such high standards, I mean, you can't even justify the atheist worldview on a much lower standard than that, because there is no absolute truth on atheism or naturalism, right? There's degrees of certainty, right? So what you're saying is that when it comes to God or God's existence, it goes from degrees of certainty to absolute solid scientific proof, clear evidence, right? And another underlying assumption is that, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, is that God has to be proven only empirically. If you cannot prove God empirically, then you cannot believe in God.
Exactly,
right?
but
So
by
this is another
science,
assumption, right?
Which is false, because look, take a normal natural belief. I was just in Speaker's Corner the other day and I was speaking to an atheist, and he said that he wants scientific evidence for God's existence, because for him science is the way, the truth and the life. It is everything for him. So I explained to him, look, basically this is not the right way to think, that everything must be scientifically verifiable. This doesn't make any sense. Look, I said to him, look, going back generations and generations and generations and generations, you must have had a great grandfather, right? Scientifically, you can't prove that.
Yes.
You don't have his DNA.
Yep.
You don't know where his grave is. You don't know where his clothes are. You don't have anything. The only way you can conclude that he existed is by basic rational thinking, not by scientific evidence. You can't do that. In the same way, imagine that you hold the belief that your mother is your mother, right?
Yep.
Now this belief is based upon testimony of the father, of the mother, and maybe the midwife, right? But you do not have any scientific evidence that she's your mother. Now you may say, well, hang on a minute, what I can do is I can go get a DNA sample and I can prove that she's my mother.
Yes.
But you can do that in the future. But
right now,
you believe she is your mother.
You're none the wiser, basically.
Exactly.
Until you go out and do
Exactly.
that.
So science is a limited method, which is a fantastic method,
Yeah.
right? But please only use it where it's applicable.
Yes.
Don't use it where it's not applicable.
Be consistent what you're saying, basically.
Yeah.
There's a lot of inconsistency when people do that. And it's a very good point, because most of the things we believe are based on testimony, right? Most of the scientific claims we believe are based on testimony.
Testimony or just
right?
basic rational thinking.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, basic
These
rational
are,
thinking.
I mean, we don't. What I'm basically trying to get to, if anybody was to get the gist of the show,
Yeah.
it's not always about having scientific evidence, because most of our beliefs are not based on scientific evidence.
Yeah.
It's not about having a philosophical, sound, deductive argument,
Yeah.
because most of our beliefs as human beings, rational beliefs, are not based on that either.
Yeah.
It's about basic rational thinking.
Yeah.
So when it comes to God's existence, let's come on the same level. Now, when it comes to basic reasoning, then you can use something like the mobile phone example,
Yes.
or basic design, or anything like this to explain that God exists.
So he's saying use the reasoning we would generally, as theists and atheists, use
Yes.
throughout our day-to-day lives. So imply the same reasoning which works when it comes to the existence of God as well.
Don't come up with a
set up a
special
new
standard.
criteria just for this specific topic at hand, right? You're applying your basic reasoning faculties throughout your entire lives on a daily basis, and it works. It serves you well throughout your life. Now, just when it comes to the question of God, wait a minute, I'm going to use a special criteria that I've devised in my mind to apply to God for whatever reason. Because I don't want to accept it, because of my presuppositions, I want to reject this. I will set up this unmatchable criteria which cannot be met, just for the sake of making sure that this topic at hand can be refuted. Basically, this is what I say.
Precisely. That's the point.
That's where the penny just dropped. It made sense at that point, and that's very interesting, because that's what tends to happen. Let's face it. The reality is that's what majority of atheists tend to do. The basic rational thinking goes out the window, and this super criteria, if you like.
When it comes to only God.
Yeah, super criteria comes into
Yeah,
existence.
because if they were to apply that standard,
Yeah.
that same standard that they have for God, that extreme skepticism standard,
Yeah.
to everything else in life,
Mhm.
they couldn't believe the world was real.
Yeah.
They couldn't believe their mother was their mother.
Yeah.
They couldn't believe even in the scientific method, because
Yeah.
the scientific method is based upon testimony.
Yeah.
Now, to wrap up the show, I actually want to give the viewers a little gift, right?
Okay.
This is something I came across which is quite interesting. It was actually about who discovered the scientific method, right? And interestingly, I initially used to think that it was the Greeks who initially developed it, and then it was the Muslims who refined it, and then the Europeans later on who refined it even further, and then we have it to the level that we have it now. But to my surprise, and this is actually off a non-Muslim website, not a Muslim website, right? And the link for which is going to be in the description of this video. The scientific method was devised by the Muslims. They didn't refine it. It was actually devised by the Muslims. What the ancient Greeks did is they just worked on empirical science, a little bit of measurements, things like that. They didn't have a method per se.
Yeah.
The method was actually devised by Ibn Haytham and other medieval Muslim scientists, and for hundreds of years the Muslims had this fantastic method, and then it went to Europe with Francis Bacon,
Further
Galileo,
developed,
all the rest. They developed it even further. And the amazing thing is this: atheists seem to think Islam is allergic to science, or that science can be used as a sort of battering ram against Islam.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, it's actually Muslims who developed it. Atheists didn't develop it.
Yeah.
And I challenge any atheist to give me any evidence that they did.
It's just a matter of, let's not hijack science and try using it as a bat or a weapon against theists. It's not the case when you study it.
Especially Muslims, because they came up with it.
Exactly. And one more point I want to make is, just so some atheists don't think we're trying to elude the topic, they don't have proof for God, empirical evidence, so they're trying to, wiggle around it. It's none of this, basically, because if we really think about it, the question of God is a metaphysical question, is beyond the physical, and science we know is limited to what's physically observable. So to ask the question in the first place, or for ask for direct evidence for the existence of God empirically, is a pathetic thing to do if we think about
Well,
it.
it's because they don't understand the concept of God. And like I've mentioned many times already in this video, most of your beliefs will go out the window.
Yeah.
Your rational beliefs that you hold, if you just try and put them underneath the scientific method.
So to sum up, just so everyone understands the basic points to take away from this, what we're saying is we use basic reasoning throughout our entire lives. It works, it serves us well. So what we need to do when it comes to the question of God as well is to continue to use what works, and that would work in this scenario as well. Not to set up some super criteria just to beat around the bush or to deny this reality, basically.
Exactly.
Is that what you say? Right, Jazakallah khair, bro. I think hopefully that will really benefit the Muslims and the non-Muslims out there. And hopefully you guys benefit from this and join us again for the next show. Jazakallah khair for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.